Wonder why Yale was saying that until I came across some rather interesting clips from the Henchmen court case, in fact, in which Abdullah was testifying about Chris Lighty and his family were being set up by people that were actually around him at the time. Now, one of those people, if we're thinking about the timeline of things, Diddy was also being managed by Chris Lighty at the time, remember? So, who was close to Jimmy Henchman that would have been giving information? You know?
Did anything else happen with respect to the slap? Objection. Sustained. You mentioned that Jimmy had his son's mother press charges. What did you mean by that? He had him press charges against a dude who assaulted his son. Criminal charges? Criminal. Were there any other charges? A lawsuit was filed. Do you know what happened to that lawsuit? It was dismissed. Now, you testified previously that Chris Lighty was the manager of G Unit. Have you ever seen Chris Lighty in person? Yes. When did you see him? Last time was at a New Year's Eve party. We was all at some hotel in Miami. When was that? Obviously New Year's Eve, but do you know what year? '07 going to '08, I think. Who was at that party? Just a bunch of family and friends. Was Jimmy there? Yes. Anyone else that you recall? Teddy, his son, his family and friends. And what happened when you saw Chris Lighty at that New Year's party? Nothing really. Went and shook somebody's hand that was with us, and me and Jimmy was standing there. So we said, there go that clown right there. And Chris walked away. Now, prior to this incident that night, where were you? We were at Jimmy's house having dinner. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 50. Do you recognize this photograph? Yeah, on the patio. Who is this? That's me and Jimmy. Which one is you? The one on the right. And the left is Jimmy. Where was this photograph taken? On his patio. Government offers Government Exhibit 50. Received. Moving forward a little bit in time, did there come a time when you spoke to Jimmy about action he wanted to take against Chris Lighty? Chris had some dude that was supposed to be allegedly a friend of his, and he had told Jimmy he'll give him an address of where him and Chris was meeting at. He said, but just don't kill him. Who was this who said this? Some guy that was supposed to be a friend of Chris. How did you learn about it? From Jimmy. So what did Jimmy tell you, if anything, he wanted to do? Said he just wanted to give Chris a leg shot. What's a leg shot? Have him shot in the leg. So did the defendant ask you to do anything in relation to this? One night he hit me up on the BlackBerry and was like, yo, light-skinned dude gonna be at this restaurant in Midtown somewhere in Manhattan. He said, see if you can get somebody to come through and handle that. Did you know who he meant when he said light-skinned dude? Yeah, Chris Lighty. What was he telling you to do? Have somebody come through and give him a leg shot?
So when I'm hearing something like that, just come through and give him a leg shot, right? Just come through and give him a leg shot. Does that sound like someone trying to kill someone? It sounds like you're trying to warn somebody, right? Am I wrong? Doesn't that sound like you're trying to just warn somebody? Not necessarily trying to kill them. If I'm beefing with someone and I'm trying to just get rid of them out of here, and I'm trying to line them up, why would I just line them up to give them just a leg shot? Think about that.
You mentioned he said this to you on a BlackBerry. Was that your encrypted BlackBerry? Yes. Where did he say Chris Lighty would be? At some restaurant in Manhattan. And what did you do, if anything? I said okay and put the phone down, kept watching TV, hit him back a few minutes later and was like, yo, wait for my guy to hit me back, but I don't think it's going to happen. Then he hit me back asking me what's up, and I was like, nah, I don't think we're going to be able to come through. And then he was like, all right. Where were you at this time? I was at home. Where was home? It was in Jersey. And when you responded to the defendant, what were you telling him? I was telling him that I couldn't get nobody to do it. Did you look for somebody to do it? Nah, I told him it was a bad idea. Why did you think it was a bad idea? It was all going to point back to us. By that time, a dude, Lodi Mac, had got knocked off, so I was going to paper. It was a lot of going on with the drugs. You know, Stash House had got raided. It was just too much going on to be having Chris clapped in the leg. Chris was a square. His father was ex-law enforcement. Nobody had time for that nonsense, man. So it's like, Abdul, this shit is a bad idea right now. When said Chris was a square, what do you mean by that? He wasn't in the street, man. He had no street affiliation. Who gonna just walk up and shoot him in the leg for no reason? Do you remember approximately when this is? Probably had went to '09. Did you speak with Jimmy about this afterwards? Yeah, we spoke. He was just like, it could have got done. I was like, how, bro? I said, a loud shot in Midtown Manhattan, somebody going to jail, bro. And he was like, look, it could have got done. If I was around, I could have did it myself. Did you have any other conversations with Jimmy about Chris Lighty? Nah, another time Tori was setting up on him down at this restaurant in Houston. The same dude who was supposed to be Chris' friend was lining him up again. And Tori was sitting on him down at Houston's. And I found out about it, hit Tori up. What is Houston's? A restaurant. Where? They have them all over, but this one was down on Park and in the 20s. So what did the defendant tell you Tori was doing? Was sitting on Chris down there. What does that mean? Sitting there waiting for him to come out of Houston's to put the leg shot in him. And so what event? You said you contacted Tori, is that correct? Yeah, Tori is like, yo, it don't look good down here. There's a police car right in front of Houston's. I was like, all right, bro, you need to just spread out then, just go ahead and leave. He said, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. What did you mean by spread out? Leave. What did Tori tell you he was there to do? Give him a leg shot. Give who a leg shot? Chris Lighty. Did Tori say whether he was by himself or with others? He said he had his shooter with him. And how was it, if you know, that the defendant was getting information about the location of Chris Lighty? Somebody that was cool with Chris Lighty. How do you know that? From the defendant, from Jimmy. What did he tell you? He said he had somebody who was cool with Chris Lighty giving him information. Did you ever talk with the defendant about any other members of Chris Lighty's family? One time we were at leaving SOBs from a function. He had Jason drive him in this red Expedition that D had. Whose red Expedition? D. It was an older Expedition. Jason was driving him in it. And then where were you? We was downtown Manhattan at this point, called SOBs. What kind of spot is SOBs? Like a bar, lounge, entertainment. And we were leaving there, and he said he had a line on Chris Lighty brother that live up in Westchester, and he was going up there to check it out and was going to have Jason drive him. Spoke to him afterward and said he seen the dude up there. He sat on him for a while, and he let some shots off at him. He said he think he hit him. He don't know, he said, but he let a few rounds off on him with his .22 with a silencer. So you had a conversation with the defendant outside of SOBs, is that correct? Yes. And was anyone else present for that conversation? It was just me and him talking. It was other people there, but it was just him and I talking. Did he leave? Yeah, him and Jason left. Did you see him leave with Jason? Yes. And then afterwards, you said you had a conversation about what had happened? Yes. What did Jimmy say he had done? He said he sat up there for a while, sat on him, saw the dude, and he let some rounds off at him. What gun did you say he had? His 22 with a silencer. Did he talk about other members of G Unit at this time? No. Now, I am going to direct your attention to August of 2009. Did you have any conversations with Jimmy related to G Unit feud at that time? He was going down to Miami for the weekend, Kez's birthday. We was throwing him a party and we was all going down there. He met me uptown by the barber shop because we had to talk about, I was asking him his opinion. I was like, yo, should I still mail this, ship this work in, or just wait until we get back from Miami? You said a barber shop. What barber shop was that? It was a barber shop I used to get my hair cut in Harlem on 145th between Amsterdam and Broadway. You met with the defendant there? Yes. What were you talking about? I was asking his opinion. I was just like, yo, y'all gonna be out of town in Miami. I said, should I just have this work shipped in? Because he was leaving on a Thursday. I know I was leaving on a Thursday. I said, so should I have it shipped in, just held at the stash house, or just wait till we get back? What was the it? The coke. We had some work coming in from LA, so we was going over that. And so it was a sidebar. He was like, yo, when you see Tory man, tell him to give Slim some money. Slim told me they only gave him $1,000 and he just came home and that ain't no money. Dude making money right now. Tell him give him more than that. Slim wasn't just working for me. I was like, all right. He said, by the way, can I stop you for one moment? Who is Slim? Slim, Jimmy homeboy. I don't know him. Have you ever met him? Nah. You ever spoken to him? No. You knew him as Jimmy's friend? Yes. What did he tell you about Slim? Tell Tory to give him some money. He just came home. Did he say where he had just come home from? Yeah, from jail. And why did he say you should tell Tory to give him money? He said tell him Slim wasn't just working for me. He was working for him too. Then he said, by the way, Slim was locked up with the dude, Lighty, and the dude didn't know that Jimmy and Slim was cool. He have said Lighty was up there bragging about smacking his son. You know, just talking reckless. He said him and Slim still in contact. Slim befriended the dude, and Lighty on his way home, he said, so Slim gonna stay in touch with him, so he gonna possibly line him up when he get home.
So that was how Lodi Mac actually really got lined up. He didn't know that he was cool with the guy in jail as well. But tying in Chris Lighty, of course, let's rewind back to the leg shot, of course, right? Now, on top of the leg shot, them laying on Chris Lighty's brother, then later seeing them on again, someone else giving information, which there could have only been two people at the time doing that. That was either Diddy, who he was managing at the time, or the assistant, Blue Williams. Now, of course, we don't have to show who Blue Williams is because not necessarily important. But Blue Williams was another person that was of interest when Chris Lighty passed away. But of course, Blue Williams had nothing to gain except for him taking on Primary Wave. So that's no different than, say, for example, the killing of Mo 3. where the manager had more to gain than lose with Mo3 dying. Blue didn't necessarily have more to gain with Chris dying. He had more to lose. He had way more to lose. Because Chris was the brains of the operation. Think of Pinky and the Brain. If Brain die, Pinky ain't gonna do shit but run around the cage. So, Brain dead, Pinky ain't moving nowhere. So that eliminates Blue out the picture. But like I said, if we're thinking about the leg shot and the whole warning thing, I'm thinking about the fact that, like I said, Diddy is being managed by Chris Lighty at this time. So who else will be running around with this gentleman? Who else will be giving information to Jimmy Henchmen of all people? If it wasn't Mr. Sean Combs, allegedly. Who else will be close to Chris Lighty that would even have remote contact with Jimmy Henchmen other than Diddy? I'm just putting two and two in here together. Now, on top of that, if we're thinking of the fact that Diddy still has big connections with Jimmy Henchmen, you are now being managed by Chris Lighty. Chris Lighty has the beef with Jimmy Henchmen. You are now also an informant, as well as you are giving information allegedly to Jimmy Henchmen of where Chris Lighty is. Each and every time. It now answers the question that I was asking before. Why the fuck would you sign to Violator management when you had your own entertainment label yourself? You had your own entertainment label with Bad Boy, your own internal management team and staff, and connections out the wild fucking zoo. What would you need Chris Lighty for? If you weren't trying to line him up as well. Considering Press Play was not the big success that we all thought you thought it would be, other than the Keisha Cole record. Last night, couldn't even get an answer. Tried to call, wouldn't even let me die. Just saying, that was the highlight of Press Play album. So of course Chris Lighty did his job, but in hindsight, Diddy, you were doing your job by being your informant self, laying on Chris Lighty and helping Jimmy Henchmen find him. Now back to the leg shot and all these other warning shots. Doesn't it sound like somebody owes money more than to do a beef? I'm trying to beef with somebody. I'm maybe trying to get them out of here. I'm not trying to say, hey, stop fucking with me and give you a leg shot. I'm trying to get you out of here at that point. Let's couple that with what Yayo said. Chris is a lot more confident and stronger with G-Unit around him. This almost is starting to sound like Chris Lighty signed protection from Jimmy Henchmen. But why did he sign protection? Is the question. Because like I said, it is starting to sound like somebody owed somebody more than somebody had a beef with somebody. If you get what I'm saying. Starting to sound pretty interesting.
Let's get the witness and continue. The witness is on the stand, Your Honor. Forgive me, I didn't even look. Okay, let's go. Mr. McLoud, you are still under oath. Brian McLoud, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Mr. McLoud, when we left off yesterday, you were talking about your time in the Tombs with Mr. Roseman. Do you remember that? Yes. Did there come a time when you were released from the Tombs? Yes, I was transferred to Rikers Island route to go upstate to finish my 2 to 4 concurrent sentence. And did you finish that sentence? Yes, I did. When were you released? December 10th, 1998. After being released, were you on parole? Yes. Did you commit any crimes on parole? Yes, I returned to selling narcotics, crack in the Midtown Manhattan vicinity, and I was arrested subsequently on June 16th, 1999. Following that arrest, what happened? I was taken to Rikers Island where I received a 2 to 4 sentence, ran concurrent with the parole violation. Did you serve that sentence? Yes, I did. When did you get out? I was released to work release February 2nd, 2001, and I remained at Fulton Work Release Facility until April 24th, 2001, where I was released on regular parole. After being released on parole in April 2001, did there come a time when you got a job? Yes. Where? Well, in work release that February, I worked at Popeyes. It's a chicken spot on 13th and 1st. And then in May of 2001, I worked as a GED and math coordinator at Fortune Society. What is the Fortune Society? It's a not-for-profit that specializes in helping at-risk youth and ex-offenders and people who are HIV/AIDS positive, and it's like a social advocacy, counseling, educational agency in New York City. When you worked at Fortune Society, where did you report to work? I think the address is 53 West 23rd Street. In Manhattan? Yes. So that's 23rd and what's the cross? It's closer to 6th. It wasn't between Broadway and 6th, but it's closer to 6th. What was your work schedule? Monday through Friday, basically 9:30 to 9 to 5:30. Were you paid for that? Yes, I was. Did there come a time when you worked for James Rosemond, the defendant? Yes. When did you start working for Rosemond? I would go see Jimmy regularly, but in 2002, he expressed a need to have someone be a manager in the evening at the studio, so I would say around April, May of 2002. What was Rosemond doing at the time? Rosemond was managing his artists and running his label. Did he have a company? Yes. What was his company called? At the time, it was Henchmen Entertainment. Did the name of the company later change? Yes. What did it change to? Czar Entertainment. Did what the business change or just the name? Seemed just the name change. Who did Rosemond manage? He managed Mike Tyson, The Game, Mario Winans, Sharissa, Black Rob, Craig Mack. That's off the top of my head. When you say The Game, who is The Game? He's a West Coast artist that was signed to Dr. Dre and later worked with 50 Cent. What kind of artist? He's a rapper. Where was Jimmy's company, Henchmen Company, located? 11 West 25th Street. Can we publish Government Exhibit 600Y? Do you recognize the street shown in this photograph? Yes. What street is that? It's 25th Street. And can you see in the photo the entrance to the building where Jimmy's company was located? Yes. Can you describe for the jury where it is in the photo? There's an awning that says Noir Blanc, and it's a little past that, and there's a 7-Eleven on the partition that comes out. How far was Jimmy's company and his office from Fortune Society? Right around the corner, literally. I would go up the block from 23rd Street and cut through. I think it was like some little toy something or on 23rd, led out to 24th, and then I would just come around the corner. So a 5-minute walk. How did you become involved in working for Rosemond's business? Jimmy and I met, and he expressed a need to have someone at the studio, and I was always there periodically off and on. So I just stepped in to fill the position.
Here's
What
where
did
it
you do at
talks
the
about
company?
the car getting shot up.
Basic.
So here's where we're going to start getting into the time where Chris's car was actually shot up. by Jimmy Henchmen.
He was concerned about the people abusing phone privileges, computers, damaging property, stealing. There may be something that just needed to be kind of reined in to keep a check on the bills, the expenses that were accruing as a result of people kind of not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So could you say I was there to do that? And when you say he, are you talking about Rosamond? Yes. How often did you work at the company? Pretty regularly, Monday through Friday. What time of day would you work? It would be after I left my other job, so 6-ish to midnight, sometimes later. Did you get paid for what you did? No. Did Rosamond give you compensation in any way? Well, if I needed something, Jimmy would, if I asked him for it, he would give me something. And how much money would Rosamond give you around this time? Well, I was working and a lot of people came to Jimmy for things, so I tried to be as self-sufficient as possible. But it might be a couple hundreds, it might be 50, it might be a haircut, it might be a cab, something of that nature. Did you have any other arrangement with Rosamond relating to music? Jimmy always made it known if I had an artist or if I had someone who wanted to record, that the studio was there as long as I went through the proper channels that could happen. At the time, did anyone else who you were in the Tombs with, Rosamond with, work for Rosamond? Derek was always around, and when Jonathan Brown came home from jail in 2002, he was always around. Okay, can we publish Government Exhibit 16? Who is that again? Jonathan Brown. And can we publish Government Exhibit 5? Who is that? Derek Grant. What, if anything, did Grant do for Rosamond? Grant would accompany Rosamond to events. There were a couple of times where Grant, you could say, acted as muscle for him. You could say he was sort of security. Are you familiar with the company called Violator Records? I am. What is Violator Records? It's a company similar to Rosamond's. It's a management. It was ran by Mona Scott and Chris Lighty. Directing your attention to the period from around 2001 to 2002. During that time period, did there come a time when you spoke to Grant about an act of violence relating to Violator Records? Yes, he told me that he had just put a couple of shots into, I guess there was like a glass partition or awning at the Violator office, and we were leaving the office and he explained to me that he just put a couple of shots into that glass. What were you and Grant doing when he told you this? We were just talking, and I think we were about to both leave. We were both leaving. We were at the studio, and we were both leaving the studio. So in the elevator and walking out the door, he explained this to me. Did Grant explain why he did that? Not actually. Objection, Your Honor. Yes or no? Just answer yes or no. Yes or no? Did Grant explain why he did the shooting? No. Did Grant tell you anything about whether he was going to be compensated for the shooting? He said Jimmy was going to answer it, yes or no? Yes. What did he say? He said Jimmy was going to give him a half a kilo of cocaine. Before that conversation, did Grant ever say anything about having the problem with Chris Lighty or Violator? No. Can we publish Government Exhibit 6? Who is this? This is Jason. Do you know his full name? Jason Williams. Did Jason Williams work for Rosamond's company when you did? Yes. Based on what you observed, what, if anything, did Williams do at the company? Jason was an assistant to Rosamond. Initially, when I met him, he would store contracts. He would handle emails, take care of scheduling, phone calls, messaging, things around the studio. After that, he became Jimmy's driver and still acted in the same capacity. And in the early 2000s, what kinds of tasks did Jason perform for Rosamond? Objection, Your Honor. Time period, remind me? Early 2000s. I'll allow it. You could answer the question. Early 2000s, Jason would be, for lack of a better word, an administrative assistant and sometimes driver. Did you observe Jason interact with Rosamond? Yes. How would you describe Jason's relationship with Rosamond? He looked up to Jimmy. He respected him. He saw Jimmy as a mentor. Objection to the categorizing things, the characterizations that he is using. I think his testimony should be limited to what he saw. He is testifying about what he observed. It's overruled. You can answer. It was a paternal or an avuncular relationship. In this parental relationship, who was the parent? Jimmy. Who was the child? Jason. Did you observe Jason Williams interact with Derek Grant? Yes. How would you describe the relationship between Grant and Jason Williams? During the same time period? Yes. Initially, Jason and Derek, they had a love of video games. They liked similar music. I would say like brothers, friends. Did you ever observe them play video games together? Yes. Where? At the studio. Earlier, you described a shooting that Grant did at Violator Records. Did there come a time when you learned of another act of violence against Violator Records? From Grant? No, just another act of violence, not asking about whether Grant did it. Did there come a time when you learned of another act of violence against Violator Records? Objection to form, Your Honor. Overruled. You can answer the question. Either late 2002 or early 2003, cold outside. I think it was early 2003. It was a Friday night and we were en route to a function at Cipriani's, and it was Jonathan Brown, myself, and Rosamond. And Rosamond had been trying to get in contact with Chris Lighty to discuss something to do with the meeting. And apparently Chris was ignoring his attempts to communicate with him. And minutes before we all left together, Jimmy went downstairs by himself. I'll say about 10 minutes later, he called us meaning Jonathan Brown and myself, and we came downstairs, and when we got in the car, he explained that he had just put a couple of shots into Chris Lighty's car because, he was ignoring him. And at that very moment, his phone rang. It was Chris Lighty, and he explained that I'm not ignoring you. I've just been out of town, real busy. And we just all looked at each other, and I said, that's God.
That's God, all right. Because let's backtrack a bit. Chris Lighty put some holes in the car, and all of a sudden Chris Lighty calls like, "Hey, hey, hey! I'm not ducking. You know, I'm just out of town." Interesting. Again, this is starting to sound more like someone owed someone more than someone had a fear of someone or even beefing. The more I am hearing about this, and the more I am putting this with two and two together, and thinking about the fact that Yayo said that when G Unit got around, Chris started to poke his chest out more. Not that he was a punk, but he started to be a little bit more confident in things. And now I'm hearing this here in the statements that after Jimmy put holes in the car, let's run it back real quick just so we have better context of things, right?
Ready to discuss something to do with the meeting, and apparently, Your Honor, overruled. You can answer the question. Either late 2002 or early 2003, cold outside. I think it was early 2003. It was a Friday night and we were en route to a function at Cipriani's, and it was Jonathan Brown, myself, and Rosamond. And Rosamond had been trying to get in contact with Chris Lighty to discuss something to do with the meeting. And apparently Chris was ignoring his attempts to communicate with him. And minutes before we all left together, Jimmy went downstairs by himself.
So Jimmy's trying to call Chris Lighty and discuss something with him, right? So once again, does it sound like they're beefing around this time? Around 2002, 2003? No, right? And this is also around the time that he's just now signing 50 Cent, right? Let's think about that. Mr. Tougher. Objection to form, Your Honor. I don't know why it's... Oh, Mr. Okay, Slim. Okay. Anyway, I'm just thinking about the context of what, like I said, what Yayo had just said. This is either late 2002 or early 2003. This is before. This is before G Unit is established with Chris Lighty, right? G Unit had not necessarily gotten with Chris Lighty just yet. Because when Jimmy Henchman puts those holes in the car, Chris says, hey. I have, I'm not ducking you or anything like that. I just hadn't gotten back to you yet. Doesn't that sound like someone, not necessarily was beefing with someone, but that started to sound more like Chris owed Jimmy. Don't you think?
I'll say about 10 minutes later, he called us meaning Jonathan Brown and myself, and we came downstairs, and when we got in the car, he explained that he had just put a couple of shots into Chris Lighty's car because, he was ignoring him. And at that very moment, his phone rang. It was Chris Lighty, and he explained that I'm not ignoring you. I've just been out of town, real busy. And we just all looked at each other, and I said, that's God. And we pulled off. Where were you and Jonathan Brown and Rosemond when you got into the car? Where was this? This was on 25th Street. Were you guys at the company, at Jimmy's company's office before you got into the car? Yes. Who was it that you said that put shots into Chris Lighty's car? Jimmy said this. Who was it who described to you that he did that because Lighty had not been returning his call? Jimmy did. Which car did you guys get in? I think it was a black Lexus. Did there come a time when you stopped working at Rosemond's company? Yes. Roughly what year? The end of 2003. Why did you stop working at the company? Jimmy was cleaning house, getting rid of a lot of riffraff. The studio was getting out of control, and myself and a couple more guys were actually engaging in the same activity we were supposed to be deterring, and that activity was smoking marijuana in the steps of the building where the studio was. How would you describe your relationship with Rosemond after that? Nothing changed. It's just that I wasn't at the studio anymore. After leaving the studio, did there come a time when you were arrested in a drug case? Yes. When were you arrested? August 29, 2004. Where were you when the arrest took place? I was in an apartment in Woodside, Queens. Who did the apartment belong to? The apartment belonged to Jonathan Brown. Can we publish Government Exhibit 16?
Okay, so, because let's not get too far out of context with that. So, once again, if we are thinking about what was said in those excerpts, in those scripts, let's say those transcripts, it is starting to sound like to me that Chris Lighty allegedly owed Jimmy Henchman money. If we're following along here. And Diddy signing to Violator management was to keep tabs on the money. Remember that saying, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. It would seem that Diddy was sent over there as an informant to infiltrate Violator management for Jimmy Henchman.